Last week, the CEO of Target sent a company-wide email explaining Pride-themed merchandise would be removed from some stores because of physical threats to Target employees. Target has sold similar items for more than a decade in celebration of Pride Month. But this year, a small, vocal group of people has gathered online encouraging a boycott of one of America's favorite brands.
What was supposed to be a quiet reading time with drag queen Panda Dulce ended like this.
Did you guys call the cops?
It was stormed by 8 Proud Boys who disrupted the event.
The incident occurred Saturday, and witnesses who wanted to stay anonymous say the group that disrupted the event was acting aggressively and yelling offensive slurs against the LGBTQ plus community.
You know, they came in and they were screaming about, like, pedophilia and saying things like, we have to save the children. And I mean, they were terrifying the children.
Also, yeah, we're going to be going on hunting expeditions pretty soon. You know, hunting the LGBT supporters across Arizona and Phoenix.
An Arizona man's vile threats against the LGBTQ community now prompting a police investigation. What's not known is whether that man will face any charges for the threats that he's making.
Team 12's Joe Dana has the latest on how police are responding in tonight's big story.
Light that will be missed. That's how a murdered trans woman is being remembered tonight.
Living with a target on your back. 3 shot, 2 killed this year alone in Atlanta.
Flowers and candles mark the area where Xavez was killed. However, even in death, the impact of her life is being felt across the city.
3 since last year in Milwaukee. The shocking numbers and what many of the suspects have in common.
It's scary out there, so we need to lean on each other.
Dozens from Louisville's LGBTQ community clutched onto light in the dark.
All right. So give me a little short transition story for you.
I had always kind of just felt like I was supposed to be a girl. It's hard to get into, I guess, when I would see my grandparents. They like to square dance, and they, you know, dance around, and they had the little like tutu thingy with all the frills and stuff, and I used to always take them for my grandma and wear them and dance around in them, and I thought it was so much fun. And when I was younger, I just kind of didn't understand that there was really like any kind of signifier that meant you were supposed to grow one way or another. Like, people would tell me that I was a boy, but I felt like, well, yeah, but when I grow up, I'm going to be like this. So, like,
it was a time when I didn't really have the language to say so. And I don't think I really had the language to come out because I was just really, really young. I think the school that I went to just did a lot of like gendered things in particular. Like, oh, girls do this, boys do that. And it just kept being reinforced through like so many things. Like, I went to Girl Scouts with my mom once, and they're like, sit with your legs crossed, wear a pretty skirt, you know, do this and that. And there were just so many of these rules that like I always felt I didn't align with. And I could tell that I was different. I just didn't know how.
I remember having a lot more, like, wanting to be friends with, like, girls more than, like, guys. And I remember in high school in particular, this, like, funny Halloween costume I wanted to do where I was like, okay, guys, what if I dress up in a dress as a princess and have a horse head? Like, wouldn't that be so funny? That'd be amazing, right?
I didn't realize I was trans until maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. 3 years ago, yeah. There were a lot of signs in my childhood, but because of the environment I was in, I didn't know being trans was a thing, and also like it just wouldn't have been like a safe place for me to like express that.
My biggest fear was mainly dealing with my dad's side of the family, that are still to this day Trump supporters, unfortunately, and just generally haven't been very open to other types of like minorities and whatnot. So I still haven't officially come out to them. Like, so I'm still even now worried about that because they I feel like they kind of know, but yeah, it's just generally unwelcoming people.
So there are always little things throughout my life here and there, and I didn't really put them all together until about 5 months ago. And it took me looking and reading other people's experiences on the internet, other transgender people, and realizing how much I identified with these people too. One thing that really stood out to me is if you are questioning your gender at all, that's not a very cisgender thing to do. and that's what really clued me in.
When I was a couple years ago, I started thinking, well, I feel like shit. I want to get in shape and see if that makes me happier. So I started exercising. I started doing like a powerlifting routine, and my body started changing even more. I should have been at my happiest, and I wanted to kill myself. It made no sense to me, and the more I would think about it, there'd be this little voice in the back of my head, and it would just be, it's because you're a woman. It's because you're a woman. And I couldn't, there was no other way.
I think the last week that I wanted to transition, or that I was going to come up to the decision. I was either going to live my life in a lie, live my life how I like to act and be truthful to myself, to the people around me, or I was going to kill myself. And I was really close to doing that. I had insomnia for a while, and I think the last night I would just sit there feeling like the world was screaming at me, not wanting me to be the sort of person that I'd like to be. I'd start having hallucinations because I wasn't sleeping well. I didn't want to be a damn statistic. I know a lot of trans people either attempt or do commit suicide. So, I made the change. Stop lying to myself, stop lying to people around me. I chose behaviors that were well suited to my, I suppose, personality and my beliefs in my life. And I'm living a lot better life. Well, I don't have insomnia anymore. That's nice.
I've been online a lot for most of my life. I grew up queer in an area where it was not safe to be queer openly, so I expressed that a little bit where I could online. Through that, started to realize I kind of liked it when people cared enough to kind of ask rather than just assuming what my gender was. And after some time of realizing that, realized, wait, you know what? I actually like it when people just don't assign a gender to me, just use they, them pronouns for me.
I grew up in a Mormon family, so, being like queer and being non-binary were not things that were very talked about or accepted. So my dad kicked me out when I was 16 or 17. And, I bounced in between friends' houses and my dad's house, and then, I am here where I am now. But my dad and I have a lot better relationship. He's significantly more accepting, and he is the first one to come to bat to me, for me to be like, hey, that's not my kid's pronouns, like, let's be respectful. These are her, these are her names, these are his names, whatever pronouns I choose at that time. My dad is the first one to come up to bat for me. It's such a humbling moment because it was like there was a time where that wasn't okay.
I mean, for me, there wasn't some hard stop moment. It was a process. And a lot of it was kind of allowing myself to think on it more, and then having periods of time where I didn't think about it, then sometimes I did think about it. I had started dating my current fiance. She is transgender, and introduced me to a lot of more trans folk in my life, and I started hearing a lot of similarities. And there was an actual moment, and this is when I signed up for HRT and everything, got my appointments, where I literally went, oh, I'm trans. So yeah.
There was a walkway of trans flags with a name and a little bit of a blurb about each person, each name that was attached to their lives for Trans Day of Remembrance up in Salt Lake while I was living with my parents in Utah that year. And I went out to go visit that, seeing so many names of people that passed that year. Most of them just because they were trans. There was no other reason. It's tough knowing, like, that was probably the first time I got hit with, oh wow, yeah, this is gonna be rough, isn't it?
Trans Day of Remembrance for me means remembering and honoring all the people that we've lost, especially, you know, Black trans women who are murdered at a much higher rate. But also really like embracing community and finding strength within that community.
Trans Day of Remembrance to me really means that I get to live for those trans people who couldn't, for the people who have been so impacted by hate and bigotry and all of these things, when it's just like they just want to live their full authentic selves and they don't get to. So I know that I get to live for them and get to live the life that they wanted to. And I think it's important that we take a moment to remember them.
My friends are really supportive. They've been really great of both like my gender and then my relationship with Anna. They like love Anna. They can like very clearly see how happy they make me.
I was pretty upfront about Richie. I was like, yeah, this is my boyfriend. And my family wasn't really used to that, but they're really cool and they like him a lot. Like, my brother and Richie get along super well. They're like best friends. And it's great to see. I like how accepting they are. They're really supportive of it. They always say really nice things to Richie, like his name and pronouns and everything. It's been great.
When I look in the mirror seeing someone that I'm at least somewhat happy seeing, I'm not at my transition goals yet. I really hope one day I'm able to get there. But every day I look in the mirror, I see a woman looking back at me. Not just thinking in the back of my head, it's because you're a woman like I was before. I look in the mirror and I think, oh, I'm a woman.
What brings me joy, which I do feel like includes my own trans joy, is music and being within that industry, like as a profession, where I want to help other queer people and trans people, especially within that industry, just be able to be more comfortable and finding more acceptance within spaces anywhere.
I like movies. I like theater. I wanted to be like an actor, and recently I wanted to be like a filmmaker and a writer. My hope is that maybe someday I can potentially break into the entertainment industry and help other like trans people or queer people get jobs within the industry. And what brings me trans joy is just living as myself in my dresses and my hot sexy clothes, and taking HRT and essentially just being who I've always wanted to be.
There are people who love you for you and who will love you for you and will be around. But you won't know that until you actually act the way that who you are. You won't know who sticks around, but it's scary. I lost a lot of friends, and it took about 3 to 4 years post the initial transition to sort of gain it all back. And it feels stronger than ever. And that is a positive thing that I think I found.
Don't suppress those thoughts. Don't try to hide that for a while. There's never a right nor a wrong time to transition. There's only transitioning and going forward from there. I think it's, as any other emotion, it's healthy to explore those thoughts and come to your own conclusions about yourself.
Yeah, it could be really scary, like, coming out as a trans person, like, the fear that you'll never really be able to have like that close connection. Yeah, it's hard, but there are people who love you, especially if you look in the LGBT community, if you look at like other trans people. Being with someone who like truly understands you and understands your gender and like your gender dysphoria and also your gender euphoria and like what affects that is just amazing.
With the younger of the generations, you see them become more accepting and understanding of not just gender identity, but lots of other things in the world and a lot of LGBT. And you see a lot of conservative people, they say they're targeting our kids. We're not targeting anybody. We're just trying to be happy with who we are. And your kids are seeing that, and your kids want to be happy also.
My advice would be to just try to live as yourself as much as possible. I know there are like obviously many people not in situations where it's safe to do so, but there are people out there, there are, you know, like people that will love you for who you are and will care about you and be your friends and your family. Even if your family currently, you know, your family currently doesn't support you, there are people out there and it is so, so worth it.